All right, you guys, we are back with my good friend, Dr. Rand for Ask the Doc. It's been a while, so glad to be back in Santa Monica. Thank you for lunch, as usual. And we got some good questions for you guys today. So what do we got, Doc?
Well, we got one that's a loaded one. The first one says,
All right, what is it?
I'd love to see one topic of Dr. Rand's choice added to the end of each episode. Well, I got to wait till the end, I guess. I would bet he has some burning thoughts to share with the community.
I think it's a good comment.
Yeah, no, I just, some days are better than others when I read some of the stuff on the, I guess now that it's Instagram and Facebook where...
Are you big on social media? Do you actually go on social media a lot?
I have social media. It's kind of a loaded question for me because, I realize the importance of social media and I think it has a lot of advantages and, in terms of if you're like, what's his name, Gary Vander... whatever his name, the guy that does the wine.com, right? He he wrote a book about it, and if you're in business and you're not on social media, you're in big trouble. Right?
I know.
I guess you could say I have a business of doing medicine, but I don't think it's so much for professionals. But I like to like we're doing here. I like to share different things that maybe aren't asked as a question, but I have thoughts on. And what was struck me this morning. It's funny that this question comes up. I do have some burning thoughts about some of the stuff that's on Instagram.
Tell me.
You just read stuff where I don't know where they're pulling it from, like, and what zip code they're living in where they believe this stuff. It's like,
and hence why we do this show.
Well, yeah,
Right?
That's what I kind of feel like that's where I serve some purpose, I hope, or it gives me purpose. Whether I'm doing anything or not. I feel like we can dispel some of the. It really comes down to disinformation. You know how I feel about, and it's not about the science behind governing your estrogen, right? Especially when you're on testosterone, but all the time. And, you read, I guess you watch these things from people that have absolutely no business talking about it, meaning not only do you not have a PhD or an MD, and those are different in the sense that, you could be good at research, right? And a PhD, you could have gone through school and then you have clinical background. Those two are different, but at least there's some basis for you to be talking about it, right?
Right.
And yet you have guys that are, and gals obviously, have no qualifications whatsoever, no degree, and you say, well, okay, but I know a lot of, doctors that don't know what they're talking about with this stuff too. Yeah, so do I.
Yeah.
But your odds are much improved if you're at least starting with someone who has a basic education in what they're talking about, as opposed to someone who might be good at doing a deep dive in research and can read some stuff, but you don't know what you don't know until you know it.
Right.
And a lot of people can read research, for example, and go, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense," and I can, I'm going to quote 5 or 6 studies. Well, those, unless you know what you're really looking at, could be really bad studies. And, I joke, if you want to find support for your point of view, just hit the internet. You'll find a study that gives your point of view some impetus, and that leads to a lot of confusion. So, what I see worse than that is people that don't even cite studies. It's almost like they're spewing stuff that, I don't know, they're doing almost like to get their 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
I still want to reserve the right to not name names. I just don't need to start any problems. But there are some fellas out there that every once in a while go on and say, "Excuse me," and I think I do it politely, where are you getting this from? Can you cite some references?
Right.
Or I'll just simply correct them and say, here you go, actually, and here are my citations. These are good studies, and it matches what I see in clinical practice. And again, I'm not trying to say I'm holier than thou or anything, but I have a lot of clinical experience and I have earned a degree in the subjects we're talking about.
Yeah.
So at least that's a good start, right?
Yeah.
But some of the stuff, my message is buyer beware. If you're going to, Instagram is fun for me sometimes because whether it's somebody who I admire and they're sharing something personal about their life and, more importantly, maybe their exercise routine, particularly if, like Ross Edgley's a favorite of mine because the guy is an animal. I think he's like 38 years old and he swam all the way around Britain. And he's a beast in by any definition. And then, it's great to see him taking on another project and then, see him eating, 13 donuts in a sitting or something, whatever it is, and having fun. And, or making a joke or whatever. To me, that's the entertainment value in Instagram. But to shop for medical advice on Instagram.
I know.
And again, you say, well, you're pointing a finger, Rand. Aren't there 3 back at you now? Well, to some degree, yeah, because we're going on, we're presenting videos that give not medical advice, but information out there. But it's tailored, it's general, generally not too specific where someone could take it the wrong way. I think we're careful about it. We are definitely trying to be careful.
For sure. It was important to you when we first started showing, and we were just discussing it at lunch, how long we've been doing this. I think it was like around 2014 when we started doing this, way before social media was like, how big it is today. And it was always the goal, to basically just kind of like have people a source of information that was actually legit. Because there's so much bro science in bodybuilding and fitness, everything. People they're hungry for the real information, but you can't get it from your buddy at the gym or whoever's selling you your gear. It's like...
Well, and sometimes, right. Sometimes, the advice is actually good, but I'd say probably 9 times out of 10 it's not. Or, the reasons behind it, going back to bro science, are out of this world, have nothing to do with physiology, even if it is good advice. And speaking of the gym, it reminds me of, it's the guy who has the huge biceps because he chose his parents well.
That's
and he's doing the ridiculous form bicep curls. And you think, oh, well, that must be what works because he's got big biceps. And that comes into play so often. Again, speaking of the gym, there are some guys we know from the gym that, and I got to say this carefully because I'm a registered libertarian. I don't care for marijuana. But if you smoke it, it's legal, at least in states, still not federally, but whatever. And that's fine for people who want to do it. But I mean, this particular guy I'm thinking is a pothead. I mean, like, he lives
it's their pre-workout.
And he's, right. And he's given what amounts to like psychological advice to people. I'm going, oh my God, this guy doesn't even spend but a few moments, if ever, in reality. And he's given, what we consider medical advice. And it's just an example of, just be careful, man.
I know.
If nothing else, because some of the stuff I read and I listen to, I just go, again, what zip code is he coming from, man? And who would actually pay attention? But I see it. Going back to what I started kvetching about, as they say in Yiddish. I can't tell you how many times a week I'll see someone who comes in here and says, "Well, I watched so and so's video, and they happen to be like very popular most often." And that's funny because
they would tell you that.
Well, they have to because they jumped off their anastrozole, for example, and they started growing breast tissue, gynecomastia.
I see.
And I go, what happened? We had this titrated. Are you not compliant? Well, I saw it on so-and-so's, and they said you don't need to do that, and okay, here we go.
That's right.
And one final thing, and I'll stop the rant, but, I think people judge, going back to what I was just saying, the quality of the information or the authenticness, if that's a word, based upon the number of likes or how many followers. And that's nuts. Think about that one. I don't have to give any examples, but that's nuts. There's been plenty of people that led the way to disaster. So just because there's a lot of likes or followers does not mean somebody's qualified, right?
It means nothing.
Anyway, that's not what he asked for.
I like it. I like it. Okay.
Some burning thoughts I shared.
That was a good question. Yeah. See, people, you always
I'll come up with better ones.
You always ask for feedback. You get some feedback. All right. Awesome.
This one says, "Hi Doc, I'm an avid fan here, thank you, and I watched almost every video you have on YouTube." Sorry about that. "I want to ask if you have established gyno, not painful, though like what you were saying, but sometimes it is puffy, but if it is cold, my nipples shrink like nothing. I'm not sure if it is gyno, but I have this for a long time, been a while off using steroids, but planning to use it again. The last usage was 2019. Can I still reverse this?" Well, the only way you can really establish gyno for sure, gynecomastia, the growth of breast tissue, is, really with a physical examination to see if it typically feels like a nodule rather than just sort of soft, squishy tissue, which could be fat, which could be mixed with fluid, for example, just water, or if you have a mix of, elevated prolactin in there too, it could actually be, it would be considered breast milk. Okay, that's very rare, by the way. But I'm just saying, based upon what he's saying here, that it shrinks to like nothing, he says, when it's cold. That's interesting because, yeah, breast tissue itself is not going to shrink. Surrounding tissue may, again, if there's fluid, and you could dehydrate fat to some degree too, obviously. But I don't know. I couldn't tell based upon this. But to answer a question, if it is, typically what I find is that once you have established gynecomastia, it's irreversible. Oh, wow. What it becomes, however, is not a nuisance. When it's still being exposed to estrogen before it's ever controlled, it's typically very painful. So not only is it possibly unsightly cosmetically, right? But you get an elbow there or something, or you hit something, oh my gosh, and you definitely feel it. Once you stop the exposure to estrogen, you control it, you modulate the estrogen the way it should be, and a little bit of time has to pass, it no longer is as sensitive, and then really comes down to not so much a pain issue, right, but a cosmetic issue. Typically also, if you palpate it and it feels like, oh, that feels like it could be about the size of a marble, when you get in there, it's closer to the size of a golf ball. It's funny how that works. Now again, well, I guess one question would be, am I at risk? Does that mean is it cancerous possibly? Mm-hmm. Well, men can get breast cancer. Wow. But just because you have gynecomastia does not increase your odds of it. It's not like, oh, because I have gynecomastia, I've got this lump here, I'm more likely to develop breast cancer. It doesn't make sense. Well, I guess you could argue that it could make sense, but you'd have to have some malfunctions at a cellular level for it to turn into cancer. So in other words, bottom line, I wouldn't worry about it. I would just treat it if, for whatever reason, you want to, but it's not a medical consideration like that you're at risk for something. And one thing you can do to tamp it down, particularly in the early stages where I believe there is some chance, like when you first develop it, for some reversal, you can use a topical SERM, a selective estrogen receptor modulator like a tamoxifen. So you put it you make a cream base and apply it so it goes directly to the receptors, and you can tamp down whatever sort of on the leading edge of growth to some degree. Certainly you can use an aromatase inhibitor concurrently, although the two together reduce the efficacy of the aromatase inhibitor. I think one study suggested by about 13%, but whatever, just compensate with a dose. Mm-hmm. And again, whether it's topically and or orally, a SERM is your best immediate response. And then, right behind that, literally by seconds if you want to, you can add the aromatase inhibitor. But the SERM is going to block the receptor and prevent the growth as quickly as possible. But again, once you establish it, typically it's there to stay. And again, to decide what to do with it is up to you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Doc.